A file and file in grooves into the tip of the needle. Okay, what you want to do is you want to make that needle real sticky and rough. Got that so far? How are we doing so far? You guys got that? Alright, cool. Okay, now what you're going to do is take a cotton tip and spin it up and pull the cotton off. So now the tip of your needle is wrapped up in cotton. Now, gotta find the nozzle again. Now, the nozzle, we already did all the polishing and all that, so we don't have to worry too much about making it clean, but we don't know what got in there sitting in this goo. So now you try to use the same needles for the same airbrush, because if you're like working on a 0.35 nozzle and a 0.21 needle, it won't hurt it too bad, but because it's smaller. But if you're using a big needle on a small nozzle. Okay, so now what I do is I just sit there and roll this up in here. You can see how black that is, hopefully. So I'll pull that cotton off, grab another piece of cotton, and just roll it up on there. And then take it and spin it in the nozzle again. Now I'm not pushing out the front. I don't care about the front being a little bit dirty at the tip. But what I'm mainly doing is cleaning off all the sidewalls of that nozzle. Now if I had the same exact needle, I could go into the nozzle area a little bit, but this is a dagger needle on a Badger, so I don't want to take a chance. Okay, so now you could do that until it's perfectly clean, until all the fronts come off clean. That was pretty good. I guess I'll do it one more. We're not in a rush. Alright, that came out nice and clean, so now we're good. You know those little cans of compressed air? They're not just for getting cats off the table. But you can use it to spray the nozzle and make sure the nozzle's all cleaned out. Alright, so now we got a needle. The needle, the nozzle, the airbrush body, and the handle cleaned off. Is there a reason why everybody's leaving the class, or is it just them having connection problems? Can you guys hear me? Is the show doing okay? Alright, cool. Alright, so now let's grab some other parts out of here. Grab the head assembly. Now this has a whole bunch of needles in the front. I mean a whole bunch of holes. You'll notice how clean everything comes. I mean, everything comes back to almost original cleanliness. Now this has those holes in it that really nothing can fit through. So what I'm going to do is just throw a little bit of cleaner in there, take the compressed air, and make sure the holes are all clean. Now what I do is I hold it up to a piece of light, and I make sure that I can see through every hole. If one of those holes is clogged up, the airbrush is not going to spray good. So you want to make sure all those are clean. Alright, that's clean. Go to the next part. Trigger assembly has a couple areas that get paint in that you can't seem to ever get out. And that's the brushes, the grooves right on top of the trigger. Now, if you do glue on that leather patch that I use all the time on top, you would not want to soak it in Restore. But if it did get too bad, you could soak it in Restore and then take the leather and put a new piece on, because it will clean off all the glue holding the leather on. Now this is good to do to your airbrushes probably once every 2 to 3 months. I wouldn't say you'd have to do it too much more than that, unless you're highly abusive to your brushes. But for the most part, if you clean it out, you know, pull the nozzle out and clean it and do that type of stuff, then you should be alright. Shouldn't be something that you have to do all the time. I always say the less times you have to pull the needle out, the better off you are. The less times you can stop a chance from hurting the airbrush. I find the brush that slides down the see how much paint's just pouring out of this. You can see how using the spray bottle, you could line it up to the holes and just spray right through it. Alright, that's part of the backing. do the other part, there should be a spring in here. If not, then it came out. There it is. This pulls off and then the spring is exposed. Now what's nice about this is most of the parts are pretty big on the Patriot, so you don't have to worry too much about losing them. But when you get into the velocity and the chrome, then you got problems with small parts. The HPs and HPCs. Start getting into some of that stuff, and then you got to worry about little tiny parts, losing them and stuff like that. So it's good to work over a clean area. I'm going to drop the spring back in. The spring pressure on here. Okay, we got just a couple parts left. Take off the needle lock nut. Clean that up. Now we're soaking all these parts inside the Restore. Now if you soak some of the parts with too long, if they were just nickel plated, you'll have brass plated parts. And if you soak it for too long, it can actually change the chrome to black. So you want to make sure that you're not over soaking parts. That's nice and clean now. I like just taking that and putting that back on the part that it came off of, just so I don't lose anything. We could actually put this together right now. So this drops in here, goes through there, and comes out here. Alright, now we got the front part of the airbrush and the I don't know what this part's called, but it's where the trigger rides on the backing. Now this part I always look for wear and tear, because if it starts getting real bad to where the brass is showing, this one's good, but it'll start adding a lot more resistance. So that's a piece that actually wears out on your airbrush. Okay, now we can see how easy this is to come off. Just take a little brush, kind of brush it around a little bit. Spray a little bit of cleaner in there. This airbrush is going to look brand new when we're done. It's going to restore it back to original. called a shoe. Has nothing to do with feet. He was saying that piece that rides behind the trigger is called the shoe. Cool. Alright. That's all the stuff out of there. Now, can you guys see what's in there pretty good? So as you can see, the restorer works. Now that was all inside of an airbrush that was pretty much clean. I ran cleaner through that airbrush. Now there's all different colors in there. There's blue, black, white, yellow. So that'll kind of give you an idea of what can stay inside your airbrush. So it's a great product, it works. I give it a thumbs up. Alright, now we're going to put the airbrush back together. Okay, now there's a couple things that I like doing when I put an airbrush back together. Now we already polished one part of it. So we have the body. First thing we could do is put on the air valve. Now the air valve, I like taking a little drop of oil. Sometimes I'll just put it on a little thing just so I can get a little bit. Can you guys see what I'm doing right here? Yep. Okay, so I put a little drop of oil on a screwdriver and then I'll just sit there and just kind of put it on the little air stem. I'll push it down. Kind of run that into that air. Now if you put oil in here, what's going to happen is you're going to get all that oil in there that you want, but it's also going to blow through the air portion of the trigger assembly. Now here's one thing you can do. If you do it, be very careful. This is actually an Allen head here. So now we've got an Allen key. Pull this off. Now this is those small parts that you can easily lose. Okay, so this is the keeper, the spring, and then we're going to push the air valve out. That's the air valve. Now there's no rubber in here to my knowledge. Nope, no rubber. So this part could actually be soaked if you wanted to, but I don't know why you'd ever want to. What we'll do is we'll take a little piece of paper towel, twist it up, and shove it up in there. Now what we could take is our cleaning airbrush needle, if you find it. Spin that into the paper towel and spin that. Pull it out, and hopefully no dirt comes out. Got a little tiny bit of dirt, so we'll do it again. So we're going to do that again. Take a little bit of paper towel. Spin it up. Drop it in there. Take the needle and twist it. Now if you have a sticker trigger to where the trigger the air seems to stick on, this is the part you got to clean out. Okay. Now we'll clean this stem. Now this has the little tiny O-ring that makes a seal on it. You want to make sure that O-ring is nice and clean. Now when you put oil in it, this is what you're trying to oil, is that little O-ring in there. And I mean, it's a tiny O-ring. So now what we're going to do is, remember that drop of oil we put over here? Take a little bit and spin it, oil that O-ring. Now this O-ring, wouldn't be a bad idea to order another one, especially if you're a distance away from Badger. If you're going to use Badger airbrushes, that's kind of important. Okay, now we're going to drop the stem back in. Put the spring back in. Now what's nice is there's no tension on starting the threads on this. So it's not like you're trying to compress the spring to start the threads. And then you tighten it up again. Now it's brass, so you don't want to over tighten it. Now you just rebuilt your air valve. So now your air valve should be nice and smooth. Okay, so now we can thread this back into the airbrush. Now whenever I start stuff in the airbrush, I don't just try to start threading it. I'll run it backwards first to find that thread so I don't cross thread anything. Thread that up, give it a nice little tight turn. You don't need to tighten it with a wrench. Shouldn't have to. This sometimes I will, but you shouldn't have to. Alright, so now we can put together the airbrush. Let's do another little oil job here. Now this, to me, is very important to have oiled, because this is one of the biggest frictions on the airbrush. And what I'll do is I'll just take a little drop of oil, put a drop of oil on it, drop it in there, and try to cut down on that friction. Now if it looks like that's all burred up, sand and polish it. Get some of that polish on there and